Ladies, I have the privilege of introducing you to the Chief Financial Officer and Executive Vice President of Corporate Services for Home Depot. Her name is Carol B. Tome. Carol has served as Chief Financial Officer since May 2001 and was named Executive Vice President of Corporate Services at the Home Depot in January 2007. She provides leadership I don't know when she sleeps, because she provides leadership in the areas of real estate, which we love that, store construction, financial services, strategic business development and growth initiatives, and her corporate finance duties include financial reporting, financial planning and analysis, financial operations, divisional finance, internal audit, investor relations, treasury, and tax. I'm just tired reading it, so I don't know how you do it all. I'm going to peruse. They told me to do highlights, but everything is a highlight. Carol joined Home Depot in 1995. Before that, she was Vice President and Treasurer of Riverwood International Corporation. And Carol began her career as a commercial lender with United Bank of Denver, and then spent several years as Director of Banking for the Johns Manville Corporation. Carol, on top of all her work duties, is a very active volunteer. Serves as trustee for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Metro Atlanta, Kennesaw State University Foundation, and Georgia Tech President's Advisory Board. Carol's also a member of the Board of Governors for the American Red Cross and serves as Vice Chair of the Policy Advisory Board for the Harvard Joint Center for Housing Studies. Further, she's a member of the Committee of 200, the Buckhead Coalition, and serves as Secretary to the Board of Trustees for the Atlanta Botanical Garden. The other main highlights I wanted to say are in 2012, Wall Street Journal ranked Carol number 2 on its list of the best chief financial officers in corporate America. In 2013, In 2013, Fortune magazine listed her among the top 50 most powerful women in business for the second consecutive year. She's ranked number 16 in Forbes magazine's 2008 list. Carol holds a bachelor's degree in communication from the University of Wyoming and a Master of Business Administration to Finance from the University of Denver. Ladies, please help me give a warm welcome to Carol B. Tome. Thank you. Very impressive.
Thank you, Karen. And I saw my life flash across my face. So thank you for that kind introduction. And I'm really thrilled to be here today. And please enjoy your lunch, and I'll talk for a little bit. And what I'd really like to do, though, is hear from you. So eat, enjoy your lunch, and I'll talk, and then we can have a dialogue. How does that sound? Good? All right, awesome. So when I was asked to speak, I'm like, well, what do you want me to talk about? And I was told to talk about sort of my career journey and any hints that I have to share. So I'm happy to do that. Thrilled to do that, actually, because I've got a lot of thoughts about women and business. My first thought is, congratulations to you for coming to today's event. Women are powerful when we come together, and the women of Noonan rock, so congratulations to you all. Look, you're all really, really busy. I understand that, but it's so important to take time to come together, to network, to learn from each other, to bond with each other, and to support each other. So I really, really congratulate you on that. So a bit about me, where I started. I was born and raised in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Anybody from Wyoming? No, all right, yeah, right. Not so surprising. You know, there are only 500,000 people in the entire state. And the town that I grew up in was a town of 2,000 people. So I had a really amazing childhood. You know, my parents, they taught me how to hunt and fish and cook and sew, live off the land. You know, really, it was great. I was a country girl. I was a cowgirl. It was really a lot of fun. And never did I envision that I would end up in Atlanta, Georgia, serving as CFO for the 33rd largest company in corporate America. Never thought that. But what I did think is that I could do anything and be anything that I wanted. Why? Because my mother told me so. And she told me so, and she told me so, and I believed it. And for those of you with daughters or sisters or women who work for you, the power of convincing people that they can do anything and be anything, well, it cannot be denied. Because there is absolutely only one reason I'm here, and that's because I believed that I could be. So that was a really important part of my growing up, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. But my dad was a community banker, and during college days, I went to the University of Wyoming. During my college days, I would go home and work for my father during the summers. And I thought, well, this is a pretty good gig, working for a community bank. I like this a lot. And Jackson Hole, Wyoming is a beautiful place. So I'm like, this would be a great place to live and work. So after I graduated from University of Wyoming, I went to the University of Denver for an MBA. And in my last year of graduate school, my dad called me up and he said, Carol, I've got some news. And I'm like, well, what's the news? He said, well, after 27 years of marriage, I'm divorcing your mother. And I'm like, oh, that's just awful. And then he said, I'm selling the bank. And I'm like, oh no, because now it was all about me, right? And I'm like, what? It's now what am I going to do? But I told myself, again, I can do anything, be anything I want to be. I want to be a banker. So I took one interview when I was in college. Now, that's not a good idea, but that's what I did. I took one interview. It was with the largest bank in Colorado, and I was hired into that bank. So it was a great experience. It was a time in the early 80s when the prime rate was 18%. Here we are today worried about interest rates going up. I'm like, believe me, I can recall when it was 18%. But it was a great time to be in banking, and I really enjoyed that experience. After about 8 years of doing banking, I realized that if I really wanted to grow my corporate knowledge and corporate finance experience, that I needed to go to a money center bank on either coast, either the West Coast or the East Coast. So as I was thinking about moving to the coast to work for a money center bank, one of my clients called me and said, hey, Carol, we'd like you to consider working for us. Now, this client was the Johns Manville Corporation. And if you know anything about Johns Manville, you may know that they were the largest manufacturer of asbestos in the country. Asbestos causes cancer, and they had had all this litigation filed against them, and it actually filed Chapter 11. So they were in Chapter 11 looking to come out of bankruptcy, and they asked me to join. Now, I'm like, wow, I could really grow my corporate finance knowledge and experience base if I went to work for a company in Chapter 11. So I called up my dad. We're still good friends. I called him up. I said, what do you think? He's like, are you crazy? Crazy going to work for a company in Chapter 11? I'm like, no, trust me, this will be a great experience. So left the bank, went to work for a company in Chapter 11, came out of Chapter 11. We consummated the plan of reorganization, and we started to grow. We started to grow by making acquisitions around the world. So I was a deal queen. I spent most of my time on a plane going to countries acquiring various businesses. And in 1992, we decided to make a very large acquisition of a paper and packaging company here in Georgia. And we decided to fund that acquisition by taking a subsidiary of Manville public through an IPO. So I was on the IPO deal team, and after the IPO was concluded and we made this big acquisition of a company here in Georgia, the company that we took public said, well, Carol, do you want to join us? Do you want to come to Atlanta and be our treasurer? And the company at the time was called Riverwood International. And I'm like, I'd love to do that. I just birthed my first baby. I don't have any kids, but I birthed the company through an IPO. I'm like, yeah, I'd love to join you, right? So we moved to Atlanta. Now, my husband was working in Colorado. And when I broached him with the opportunity to move to Georgia, he's like, well, what about me? And I'm like, well, can you work it out? And he's like, well, I think I can work it out. But he couldn't move immediately. So I commuted between Atlanta and Denver for about 6 to 9 months. And that's a pretty long commute. Couldn't go home every weekend, right? It's kind of a long commute. So on the weekends where I couldn't go home, I would drive around Atlanta, Georgia, getting to know my new hometown. And I'll never forget the first time I saw a Home Depot store. I had never heard of the Home Depot, but I'm driving down the street and I looked out of the corner of my eye and I saw a parking lot that was full of cars. And there was a store with this big orange awning. And I love to shop. So I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I'm going in. So I went into the parking lot and I walked into my first Home Depot store in '92 and I loved the store. I spent about 2 hours in the store and I'm like, this place is really cool. Do any of you shop our store? I hope some of you do. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So anyway, I walked around the store. I'm like, this is a really cool store. The merchandise was piled high. People had aprons on. They were having fun. There was energy in the store. I just loved it. So that night I called my husband, Ramon. I'm like, Ramon, there's this company called the Home Depot. This is '92. I said, I don't know that much about it, but I think we should buy stock. So we did. Then Ramon moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and we became homeowners, and we became Home Depot junkies. We were in the store every weekend. We love to do it ourselves. So we're in the store every weekend. So we're shareholders, we are customers, but I'm still working for this other company, right? This paper and packaging company. Then 1995 comes around, and I get a call from a headhunter. And the headhunter says to me, you know, Carol, Home Depot is thinking about going into Mexico, and they know nothing about running a business outside the United States, and they'd love to talk to you. And I'm like, the Home Depot? I'm a shareholder, I'm a customer. Okay, I'll come talk to you. So I went over for my first interview. And after my first interview, I told myself, nope, I'll be bored. The cash pours out of the stores. I'm not going to be challenged enough with this company. I love it, but I won't be challenged enough. So I went back to the headhunter and said, I don't think this is going to work for me. I don't think I'll be challenged enough. And the headhunter said to me, do you want to take a minute and think about that decision? I'm like, okay, I'll think about it. So I called up some of my very trusted friends. And I said, there's this opportunity at the Home Depot. What do you think? They think, you're crazy. You should run for the opportunity. So I'm like, all right. I went back and met with Arthur Blank. And if you know Arthur, he's one of our founders. He owns the Falcons. And I met with Arthur. And this is what Arthur said to me. He said, Carol, we don't know how high is up for you. That's for you to show us. But we will give you every opportunity to reach your highest potential. I'm like, every opportunity to reach my highest potential? Okay, sold. Well, think about this. I joined the company in 1995. We had 400 stores and revenues of $14 billion. Carried to 20 years later, we have over 2,200 stores and revenues of $83 billion. And during that time frame, we built a $12 billion business that we subsequently sold. I am the only member of the senior leadership team that has worked for all of our CEOs. I worked for Bernie, I worked for Arthur, I worked for Bob Nardelli, I worked for Frank Blake, and now I work for Craig Menear. The stories I can tell. So I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly through this experience. Thank you. And the reason why I go through that long story, and thank you for allowing me to go through that long story, is that there are so many lessons learned. One is don't be too planful about your career because you don't know where it will go. Opportunities can present themselves to you, and you've got to just be wide open for those opportunities. Don't make decisions by yourself. Always seek out advice from people that you trust, because you can oftentimes make the wrong decisions if you just lean in on your own intentions rather than understanding the greater purpose for your life. Take risks. Take them, because with risk comes high rewards. And I've taken so many risks over the career. So those are some of the lessons of my journey. Some of the lessons at the Home Depot have been really pretty crazy. So when I started at the company, there were 2 women officers. I was the second. So first officer hired in from outside of the company. So I was hired in because of an expertise they thought they needed. And as soon as I came in, the second woman officer of this behemoth company at the time, immediately people looked at me and said, well, who are you and why are you here? You know, I didn't grow up in retail. I didn't grow up at Home Depot. And they're like, we don't know who you are. We don't know what you're talking about, because I'm like economic value added, and this is how we can get a higher return on investment. And they're like, no. That nobody wanted to hear anything I had to say. So my first year was really rough. And I'm like, okay, well, this is either going to go one of 2 ways. It's either going to go that I stay and succeed, or it's going to go, they ask me to leave. So I'm like, I'd rather it be I stay and succeed. So you know what I did? I put on an apron and I worked in the store. I worked on the store in my free time, so that when I would go to a meeting, I could talk to the leadership team of the Home Depot through their lens, not through my lens anymore. What I realized, it's not what I need to say, it's what they need to hear. Really learn the power of changing up your message to the audience in which you speak. That became very clear to me when I was named CFO in 2001. So as CFO, you do a lot of different things, but one thing you do is you are the principal spokesperson for the company. So I'm named CFO, go to New York for a big investor conference. And this is for those of you in finance, you remember DLJ, they're no longer in existence, but it was a DLJ conference. So I'm in front of the room. It's lunchtime. Everyone had just finished their meal. I'm in the front of the room, and I am pitching my heart out, and I think I'm doing a great job. You know, I'm up there talking about the Home Depot and our prospects, and there's a man in the front of the room who falls sound asleep. Now, that would be bad, but it got worse because he fell off of his chair and into the aisle. So I jumped off the podium. I'm like, oh, are you okay? I jumped off the podium to make sure he was okay. He got back in his chair. I finished my pitch. And then afterwards, I had so many people come up to me and, put people to sleep and really give me grief about what a poor speaker I was. So I'm like, okay, I've got to work on this. And I did. And, Cheryl is here from the Home Depot PR team. She helped me. I mean, we had a lot of people help me. I got a lot of media training, got a lot of training, because I vowed to myself that I would never put anyone to sleep again. And I don't ever, all right, you all seem to be attentive. Okay, good. So I think so far it's working. We can talk a lot about Home Depot and just other lessons that I've learned, but I have 5 lessons that I share with people. I call them my can-do lessons. And we'll quickly go through them and then open it up for questions if that works. So can-do is basically an acronym for confidence, authenticity, networking, declare, and own. We've already talked about confidence, the power of confidence, right? It just cannot be undenied. What it means if you have confidence in your ability to do, confidence in your ability to be. I have a very good friend. Her name is Joyce Roche. She wrote a book called The Imposter Syndrome. Maybe some of you have read it. Joyce is highly successful. She was a big executive at Avon for years, head of marketing. She ran Girls Incorporated in New York City. She's on boards of AT&T and Anheuser-Busch and other companies, highly successful. She wrote the book, The Imposter Syndrome, because she's a victim of that syndrome. Do you know the syndrome? She's highly successful, and she doesn't believe that she deserves it. She doesn't have the confidence for her success. That can destroy you. That can destroy you. She's been working for years to overcome that syndrome. Confidence is critically important, and not only your ability to succeed, but also your comfort. You got to be comfortable with success, right? This is not about being an imposter. It's about being comfortable with that success. Moving to A, authenticity. You all know this. You're all women leaders. You know the power of authenticity. People will only follow you if they believe that you are real, genuine, and authentic, and they can see right through when you're not. When I started my first job in 1981, banker, there weren't that many women bankers. I happened to work for a female boss. She was so unauthentic, so not real or genuine. Her name was Mary Louise, but she would not go by Mary Louise. She went by ML, because she didn't want anyone to understand what her gender was before they actually met her. ML was absolutely convinced that we needed to assimilate and be like the guys. And so we did. We wore pinstripe suits. We had cotton broadcloth shirts with the button down, little silk bow ties. And when I went out, you know what I did? I smoked cigarettes and I drank scotch. Now, I don't like that, but I did it because we were to assimilate and be like the guys. And finally, I realized, I'm like, wait a minute, this isn't me. I don't like this. This is not who I am as a person, so I slowly unassimilated myself. Now, we had a dress code. I had to slowly unassimilate from the clothing, but all the other stuff, no. I'm like real, genuine, authentic. What you get is what you see, or the vice versa, what you see is what you get. And that's really made a huge, big difference, right? If you think about people that you most admire, people that you would follow off the face of the earth for, they are people who are real, genuine, authentic, who know something about you. So very important in terms of success as a leader. So that's the A part of can-do, authenticity. The N part is networking. Well, that's what you're doing today. You're networking. The power of networking is, well, I pinch myself when I think what I've been able to do with my life because of the nature of my networks. I am cast very wide. You know why I'm here today? I'm here because of Ann Kramer. Ann Kramer spoke to this group, I think about a year ago, didn't she? Very good friend. She worked her network. She called me and said, would you do this? Because of her, I said yes. mean, I love y'all, but I didn't know you from Adam. So, but I love her. So I'm like, I'll do this. I'll do this for Ann. Incredibly networked. I was on the board of the Atlanta Federal Reserve Bank for 6 years. In fact, I chaired that board for 3 of those years. This is a pretty cool assignment for me because my father was on the board of the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank, and we are the only father-daughter combo in the Federal Reserve history. So a pretty cool thing for me. And after I was named to that, I flew up to Washington to meet with Ben Bernanke and Janet Yellen and the members of the FOMC, and sitting around the table where the nation makes monetary policy. Pretty cool. And after my first meeting, I'm pinching myself. I'm like, who do I need to thank? I was just thinking of my network, and I realized I needed to thank Faye Wilson. Now, you all won't know Faye, but Faye was on our board when I joined the Home Depot, and she put her arms around me and really helped shepherd me through the company. She retired in around 2001, 2002 timeframe, and we had lost touch. This was now 2007. I'm like, I've got to find Faye. I have to find her. So I Googled her, I found her, and we've reconnected. That's the power of networking. And we've stayed very, very much in touch. In fact, she's coming out next weekend for an event that we're going to. So it's pretty cool, right? The power of network. That's the N of can do. Really important. Got to work it. But got to remember, it's a two-way street, right? You can't just give. You got to get from the network. You got to go both ways. All right, let's go to do. Declare it. Declare it. This is where many of us are uncomfortable. We're uncomfortable declaring our success. But here's a story. So when I worked for Bob Nardelli, and if you know the story of the Home Depot, he was brought into the Home Depot from the outside. And when he came in, he was bringing lots of people in from the outside. And so as the people were coming in from the outside, a new head of HR, a new general counsel, so on and so forth, all these individuals, and by the way, they were all men, were coming in with employment contracts. Well, I was an executive vice president, but I didn't have an employment contract. So I could have done a few things, right? I could have said, well, okay, all right, well, I've been here for a while, so therefore I don't deserve one. Or I could have said, where is my contract? I could have just, been very upset and demanding, where is my contract? Or I could have just declared it. And I decided to declare it. So I went to Bob and I said, so Bob, I've just read Dennis's contract, and I expect to see mine in my office on Monday? I declared it. And guess what? It was there on Monday. And fast forward to 2015, I am the only person with a contract. How about that? Yeah, so, right, declare it. Declare it is really important, but you got to do it in the right way, right? Had too many people come into my offices and say, well, I deserve it. That's not declaring it. Declaring it is, more affirmative, right? Positive. And then the last part of can do is own it. And for own it, I'd like to think about Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In. Everybody read it? Most of you have read it, right? Lean In. All right. And I think all of us as women leaders, we say, yep, leaning into our careers makes a ton of sense. But what we have to remember, if you're leaning in, you're leaning away from something. It's the law of gravity. You can't lean in without leaning away from something. And each of us has to make our own decision about what we're leaning away from, because it's different for each of us. We can't be judgmental or critical or criticize what we're leaning away from, but we have to own whatever it is that we're leaning away from. And this can be the hardest thing because we think we can do it all and have it all, and oh, by the way, we just can't. So you got to figure out what you're leaning away from. Now, here's a really silly thing I lean away from, but just to make the point. Again, the way I was raised, I don't know about y'all, but the way I was raised, I had to pick up my room and make my bed every single day. Put my dishes away. I mean, it was all about tidying up, right? I couldn't go to bed unless it was tidy. I do not make my bed anymore. Heck no. I mean, I'm totally leaning away from that. Because why? Right? My mom's not around, and oh, by the way, it doesn't matter. My husband's good with it. We've been married for 31 years. I guess it doesn't matter to him. So we are good with this. But it's a silly, trivial point. Because many of us have to say, okay, I'm going to lean away from community involvement because I can't, because I've got to spend time with my kids. Or many of us say, I've got to lean away from whatever it is. You're leaning away from something, you've got to do it. And you've got to be comfortable with it. You got to accept it because it's different for each of us. Now, I'm asked oftentimes about balance. Well, Carol, it sounds like you're busy. How do you balance your life? And this is how I balance it. And I'm sure you all have your own tricks. But this is how I do it. Balance in the moment. Life is a series of moments. The only thing I'm thinking about right now is being here with you. It's the only thing I'm thinking about. There's a whole bunch going on in my life. It's the only thing I'm thinking about. Now, when we're done and I walk out those doors, I will not be thinking about you anymore. I'll be moving on to the next moment. But if you balance in the moment, you can find that your life is extraordinarily balanced. I don't see my husband very often, and yet we have a very loving, rich, long-term relationship because I'm balanced with him when I'm with him. I do not carry around my phone. I do not carry my phone to meetings. I do not carry my iPad to meetings. People can find me. I focus on the moment. It's incredibly empowering. So those are my can-do tips. And what I'd love to do now is just open it up to any questions that you all may have about anything.
I have a question.
Yes, let's start here.
Well, obviously the industry started with Lowe's in 1946, and Home Depot was founded many years later in 1978. And right now, Home Depot is the leader of the industry. How do you see that gap?
So the leader of the home improvement industry?
Yes.
And where are we going?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're very excited about the opportunities at the Home Depot. If you look at market opportunities for growth, just look at census data, we only have 28% of the market in the United States. So there's a lot of growth for us to go get. In fact, we think the addressable market is close to $400 billion. So there's a lot of growth for us to get. Now, the customer is changing, and so we have to change with the customer, and we're leaning into that change in a very big way because customers now want to shop when, where, how they want to shop. So we've invested in what we call interconnected retail, which is leveraging our physical assets with our digital assets. Our digital assets would be our website. Think about this. In the second quarter, we just released our earnings a couple of weeks ago. In the second quarter, we grew our total sales by about 4.3%. 24% of the growth came from our digital assets. So our online business now makes up 5% of our total business. But here's the best part of all of this. 44% of all of our online transactions are picked up inside of our store. And 1 in 5 customers who comes into our store buy something else. So we are offering a service that an Amazon can't offer because there's no store to go to. Our convenient locations really present a value for our customers. So we're very excited about the future of our company and where we're going to go. We'll continue to invest into the customer experience because that's an important part of it. We're just finishing up a strategy workshop that I've been leading for the past 3 months, and we'll be sharing the results of that with our board in October and then our investors in December. But there's some big ideas, big things happening that we'll be unveiling pretty soon. Yes?
What percentage of your customers are female, and is Home Depot doing anything to make the experience easier for a female that may not be familiar with what she might really need at Home Depot?
Yeah, interestingly, 50% of our customers are female. Isn't that interesting? Who would have thought? Now, we tend to have a heavy penetration in professional contractors. So professional contractors make up about 3% of our sales and about of our customer base, and about 40% of our sales. So we do have a heavy tilt towards professional contractors, but when we look at gender, it's about 50-50. What we find for all customers, regardless of gender, is the number one pain point is where can I find this, right? And in fact, the number one question that we are asked inside of our store is, where can I find the bathroom? But it's generally, people want to know, where can I find this? So we are investing into wayfinding in ways that we haven't done before. So if you download our Home Depot app on your smartphone, either your Android or your iPhone, the store will localize, the app will localize to the store in which you're shopping, and then you can type or speak into the phone for the product that you are looking for, and it will tell you the bay and the aisle where the product is located. Right. Because we know the experience is not what it should be. Understand that completely. We're also really working on digitizing the information necessary to make the decision and helping you all get to the right answer. We're a project-based retailer, not an item-based retailer. But usually it's like, how do I fix this leaking toilet? Or, my sink was dripping. How do I replace the washer? So we have hundreds of videos posted both to YouTube and to our website to help with that. And of course, then we have knowledge associates inside of our store. But we understand that it's not perfect, and we continue to work on that. I think there was a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
I've been in real estate since 2001. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly.
You have, yeah.
Everything's going smoothly now. I just wanted your opinion on the economy and the upcoming election.
So the economy. I think the economy right now, obviously, we're in a bit of a crazy market. So if you think about it, what do the years 2008, 2001, 1994, and 1987 have in common? Well, they're each 7 years apart, and they are each years of severe market corrections. And so if you add 7 years to 2008, you get to 2015. What are we seeing right now? Severe market corrections. So and we know this, right? You're in real estate. You know there are cycles. So we're in a cycle. This is just how the markets go. But it'll be interesting to see how this market cycle, this correction that's really a global correction, how it influences the Fed. Because the Fed has really said and signaled that they're going to raise interest rates this fall. We'll see. We'll see if they change their mind based on this fluctuation. The general health of the economy, it's okay. Right? GDP just came out for the second quarter. It was revised upwards, grew something like 3.7%. The forecast for the back half of the year is around 2.5%. Economists have a bias. Are there any economists here? They have a bias. They always want GDP to be at 3%. They always say it's going to get to 3%. We may have had some structural changes in our country that make that very hard. But we're probably in the 2.5-ish, maybe 2.75% for a while. So that's not bad. Not bad, not great, but not bad. Rather have growth than no growth, of course. Housing is a great asset class, an awesome asset class. Did you know that of the people in this country between the ages of 18 and 34, that a third of them live at home with their parents? Maybe some of that's true for you. Yeah, something's got to give, right? A third. That's something's got to give. And so we need to get households formed. We need to have mortgage financing reform to get people into their first home. But because of the supply demand, with prices going up, well, that's pretty good for the class. And we certainly see it in our business. Our business is doing much better than we thought it would this year. So I think it's okay, but there are watch-outs. There are watch-outs everywhere we look. This focus on the current administration on raising minimum wage. Who could possibly argue against that? It's very hard to make a living for your family with the minimum wage. Who could argue against that? And yet the unintended consequences of just raising wage and trying to minimize the income gap, the unintended consequences of that are job eliminations. Because companies like the Home Depot, you know what we will do? And we don't have this problem because we pay way, way, way over the market. But if we didn't, you know what we would do? Automate, and the jobs will go away. If you go into a McDonald's in France, there is no one greeting you at the counter. You put your order on a computer screen, and it comes out the back. So it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary because this country needs jobs to grow. It needs jobs to grow. So that's a watch out for us. We just got to think through the unintended consequences. The unintended consequences of too much regulation, right? So you might have a sense of what party I'm affiliated with, but the unintended consequences of too much regulation can be job killers, job crushers, and we need jobs to get this country going. And then, of course, there's education, right? We've got a crisis on our hands when it comes to education. So, all these things, while the economy is pretty good, there are watch-outs. We've got to just really, really understand what these could mean for us long term. And then there's what's going on in China. We may say, oh, that really doesn't matter. Oh, yes, it matters a whole lot, right? Because as China's growth slows, all the commodity prices are starting to fall through the floor. It's costing more to pull copper out of the ground than you can sell it for. So we've got to, that's going to slow down economic growth. So we got to really watch what's happening in China, because it could have an impact here too. On the political side, you tell me. Right? Right? Gosh, it's too early to tell. It's just interesting, isn't it? It's just interesting. And I probably shouldn't get on my soapbox, and I won't, although I just so want to, but I won't. Okay, so other questions? Yes?
I have a question. I graduated from college in 1969. There was still a degree in design. It was a safe degree. There were only certain options. There's pretty big glass ceilings still left of that era. And we worked really hard for women, and I didn't burn my bra, but we worked really hard for women to move forward in the workplace. I encourage my daughter and my granddaughters and stuff to do whatever they want. My direction with a successful career was great because I was really in charge of my own destiny. I find a lot of the young women that we try and encourage now just settle. Where do you see the most growth potential for the young women coming up now, out of college and stuff, in their field of endeavor? Where do you see the most growth?
Well, for us, certainly it's in the sciences. So in the finance organization, so the finance team at the Home Depot, we're about 800 people strong, hire more data scientists than I do accountants. Because we're all going into data analytics. We're leaning way, way into that and the science of retail, not the art of retail. So, and I absolutely am focused on diversity. So a woman, or a young woman graduating from college with an engineering degree, a math degree, I want them, like immediately, right? So, you just want them. The opportunities are so high. Doesn't mean that we don't need artists too, because obviously there's an element of fashion and home improvement. So yeah, we need artists too. But for me, I really look at the women who are going into any STEM area. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting about glass ceilings and do they exist? I think absolutely they exist. I think we would be naive to say that they don't. If you think about the Fortune 500 companies, so these are the largest companies in America, there are less than 40 CFOs. Okay, that's not very good, right? And even fewer CEOs. So we make up a very small portion of the C-suite, even today. Now, when I started at the Home Depot in 1995, I told you I was the second woman officer. Just had all the women officers at my house last week for an event. There are 28 of us. 28, right? So I'm like, okay, change is happening. It's like a glacier melting, but it is happening. And so I really think about not so much for our generation, but for the daughters and granddaughters, what could be for them. It's really interesting to me to see what's happening, at least in the boardrooms. There's a lot of focus from a corporate governance perspective to get more diversity in the boards. Well, guess what happens when you have more diversity on boards? Well, the board members are saying, show me the diversity on the leadership team. I sit on the board of UPS. We have 3 women directors on that board, right? So we are constantly talking about diversity within the UPS leadership ranks. And guess what happens? More women are coming on to the management committee, and more people of color are coming on to the management committee. So it really helps, I think, to have sort of from the top a focus on diversity, not just us pushing up from the bottom. It's got to go both ways. We got to push too. I hear, and I don't know this for a fact, so this is anecdotal only, but I hear that the women enrollment in the MBA programs across the nation are at the lowest level ever. Yeah. This is anecdotal. I don't have the proof, but I've heard it. That's scary to me, right? Because we got to push up. We got to have the pull, but we got to push up too. So anything that we can do to encourage young women, they can be family members or friends. We should do that. What is our responsibility? We have a role. If you have a leadership role, you have a responsibility to make a difference. You have a responsibility. I can recall when I had the VP of tax position open. Now, for our company, that's a very big job. In fact, I just signed our 2014 tax return yesterday. 840 pages long. It weighed 8 pounds. Yuck, right? Yeah. Seriously, we pay $2.7 billion in taxes a year. Okay, so this is a very big job. I decided I was going to keep the job open until I found a qualified woman to fill it. So I did. It took months to find the qualified woman to fill it, and it was, that was a real pain in the rear end because I had to carry that shoulder. But I'm like, I'm going to carry that. I'm going to carry that burden or shoulder that burden because I want to fill this job with, I wanted a woman, but for sure diversity. And she's amazing. It was worth it. It was worth waiting for her. What our natural inclination is oh, I got to get the job filled, right? Phew, I got other things to do. Let's get the job filled. If we take the time to fill it with the right people, especially if you're focused on diversity, the power. I mean, it's proven, right? Catalyst has done all this work. Every company, and it can be your own company, a public company, your own business. Everybody's different if there's diversity. More profitable, more successful. Yes?
Okay, I like the part where you talk about you're in the moment, you don't carry your cell phone around, and I like that, and I would love to incorporate that in my job. I'm a commercial lender with Wells Fargo, and if I don't answer the phone at a given time, I'm losing on a customer. I may be losing a customer. Not in a meeting, you know, I can put my phone away in a meeting, but like when I'm like with family, and that's terrible to say, I hate to say that, but if I feel like if I'm going to miss that call, I may miss that customer. So how do you go about that when you're in a customer position?
Right. So we view our stores as customers. And in fact, at our headquarters, we're called the Store Support Center. We're not the headquarters. We've got an inverted pyramid management construct at the Home Depot where Craig Manera, our CEO, his leadership team, we're at the bottom. And our associates who serve our customers are at the top. And we have something called the sundown rule. So we have to return every call we get from a store before sundown. That's our customer. So while I may not be able to return a call from a store when I get it, I return it before sundown. Now, if you're prospecting and you are potentially losing a prospect because they could go to another bank for the loan, I can appreciate the stress and that you're under. I can absolutely do that. If it's an existing customer, clearly I think a sundown rule would work. On a prospecting, I would still argue that there are ways that you could just parse it and say, I'm going to,
I'd love to.
just try. You know what? Try it. Try it. You could put a voicemail on your phone that says, I will get back to you by whatever, by 5. I will return your call no later than 3, whatever it works for you. Try it. And if you lose out, then you can say, well, that didn't work. But if it worked, right? We believe in piloting in our company. We pilot all the time, right? We pilot all the time. So you might try it. There was a question?
Thank you. So I'm thinking every woman in this room wants to add you to their mentor list. How do we go about recognizing, first of all, a good mentor for ourselves, and then building that base? And then secondly, which is the professionalism of how a woman dresses still determines how men view women. So could you speak about that too?
Sure. So on the mentoring side, I'm a big believer in mentors, informal mentoring. I'm not a big fan of formal mentoring programs. Maybe some of you have signed up for those, because oftentimes you can get matched with the wrong person, and then it's a disaster. So what I think works best is to find someone that you really admire. You admire them because of the way they dress, or the way they speak, or their accomplishments, or whatever. And then you go to them and say, I would love to take you out for a cup of coffee and pick your brain. Guess what happens when people ask you to do that? It's so incredibly flattering. You're like, oh, of course, I'd love to do that. You know, it's flattering. You know, people love to be asked. Well, oftentimes people say to me, you're too busy. I didn't want to ask you. I'm like, ask me. I want to be asked. You know, we want to be liked. Ask. They'll do it in a heartbeat. They really will. Now, people are busy. They may not be able to get it scheduled right away, but they will do it. And then if you are in that relationship and you're asking for just, you know, it's more of a building a relationship. It's make sure you're offering something. Bring something to that table that you could do for them. Like, oh, I see you're on the board of the Boys and Girls Club. Did you know I do volunteer work at this site? You know, I'm making that up, but bring something to the table that will connect you. You know, you got to do a little bit of research, but it works. I'm also a big fan of just observing. I observe and I copy. I'm a big believer in copying. Like, I love that, I'm going to do that. I hate that, I'm not going to do that. You know, I had a boss who used to throw things, right? I'm like, I'll never throw things, right? So you copy. Yeah. I mean, this is not rocket science. This is just what has worked for me. And golly, the lessons, I could share so many lessons. On the question about dressing, Well, Cheryl will know this. I'm a pretty big stickler. We are casual every day at the Home Depot. Good, fine. I'm okay with casual every day. There are times I will come into the office and I'm like, did you forget to get dressed? And I am that upfront. And these may be junior level people in the company, but I will be that upfront. I'm like, did you bring your shower slippers to work? I mean, I am that upfront with people because it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing. And I'm not talking having to spend a big, huge fortune on your wardrobe, but you can look professional and buttoned up every single day if you care to do so. You have to make yourself get up and do so. But we need to call it out. If we don't see it, I mean, you look fabulous. But if you have somebody that's working for you or that you're working with and you don't see it, you need to call it out. And I have no problem doing that. And people usually are like, oh, thank you, right? One woman had a blouse that was too see-through. I'm like, it's beautiful, but I can see your undergarments. You know, that's not for work. And, you know, and people, would a man ever do that? No, he just look at the blouse, sorry. But he did. I'm assuming that he would look at the blouse. That I don't know, but I'm assuming that. So that's about the roles. That's the role that we have. You know, all of us have got to determine really what our purpose is. In 2000, I don't know when it was. It was a long time ago. Maybe it was, gosh, probably 10 years ago. Was working really, really hard every single day. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It was just crazy, crazy, crazy. And I got up one day and I looked at myself in the mirror and I asked myself a question. And the question was, what do you think your tombstone's going to read? And, you know, that was an interesting question for me to ask myself because I'm going to be cremated, but you get the point, right? So I'm like, what is it going to read? And I thought about it for a moment. I'm like, well, it's going to read, she worked hard. And I was horrified by that. I'm like, oh, no, 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 no. This cannot be my purpose. This is not why I'm here. No. So I asked myself another question, and that question was, what do you want it to read? And when I reflected on that question, I realized what I wanted to read is that she made a difference in my life. And once I figured that out, it changed me. It changed how I interacted at the office. It changed how I interacted with my family. It changed how I interacted with my community. It changed my relationship with God. It changed me. And for all of us, and there are many, many young people in this room, so you're not even thinking about your tombstone. But it doesn't matter what age you are. For all of us, we need to think about what is it? What is the legacy I want to leave? It'll be different for all of us, right? What is it? And then live your life to that every single day. And you'll find that your effectiveness as a leader, well, it just jumps up. Because going back to authenticity, people know what you stand for. They know what you want to be. They know what you're trying to leave. And they'll help you. They'll help you in that journey. So I think we're done.
We just want to thank you again before you leave this room and we're out of sight, out of mind. We have a little token of appreciation.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.